Tantor Audio presents Deity by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Narrated by Justine Eyre. Chapter 1. Red silk clung to my hips, twisting into a tight bodice that accentuated my curves. My hair was down, silky around my shoulders, like the petals of an exotic flower. The lights in the ballroom caught each ripple in the fabric, so that with every step I looked like I was blooming from fire. He stopped, lips parting as if the mere sight of me had rendered him incapable of doing anything else. A warm blush stole over my skin. This wouldn't end well, not when we were surrounded by people and he was looking at me like that, but I couldn't make myself leave. I belonged here with him. That had been the right choice. The choice I hadn't made. Dancers slowed around me, their faces hidden behind dazzling, bejeweled masks. The haunting melody the orchestra played slipped under my skin and sunk into my bones as the dancers parted. Nothing separated us. I tried to breathe, but he had stolen not just my heart, but the very air I needed. He stood there, dressed in a black tux, cut to fit the hard lines of his body. A lopsided smile, full of mischief and playfulness, curved his lips as he bowed at the waist, extending his arm toward me. My legs felt weak as I took the first step. The twinkling lights from above lit the way to him, but I would have found him in the dark if necessary. The beat of his heart sounded just like mine. His smile spread. That was all the reinforcement I needed. I took off toward him, the dress streaming behind me in a river of crimson silk. He straightened, catching me by the waist as I looped my arms around his neck. I burrowed my face against his chest, soaking in the scent of ocean and burning leaves. Everyone was watching, but it didn't matter. We were in our own world, where only what we wanted, what we'd desired for so long, mattered. He chuckled deeply as he spun me around. My feet didn't even touch the ballroom floor. "So reckless," he murmured. I smiled in response, knowing he secretly loved that part of me. Placing me on my feet, he clasped my hand and placed the other on the small of my back. When he spoke again, his voice was a low, sultry whisper. "You look so beautiful, Alex." My heart swelled. "I love you, Aiden." He kissed the top of my head, and then we spun in dizzying circles. Couples slowly joined us, and I caught glimpses of wide smiles and strange eyes behind the masks. Eyes completely white, no irises. Unease spread. Those eyes, I knew what they meant. We drifted toward a corner, where I heard soft cries coming from the darkness. I peered into the shadowy corner of the ballroom. "Aiden?" "Shh." His hand slipped up my spine and cupped the nape of my neck. "Do you love me?" Our eyes met and held. "Yes, yes, I love you more than anything." Aiden's smile faded. "Do you love me more than him?" I stilled in a suddenly lax embrace. "More than who?" "Him," Aiden repeated. "Do you love me more than him?" My gaze fell past him again to the darkness. A man had his back to us. He was pressed against a woman, his lips on her throat. "Do you love me more than him?" "Who?" I tried to press closer, but he held me back. Uncertainty blossomed in my belly when I saw the disappointment in his silvery eyes. "Aiden, what's wrong?" "You don't love me." He dropped his hands, stepping back. "Not when you're with him, when you chose him." The man twisted at the waist, facing us. Seth smiled, his gaze offering a world of dark promises. Promises that I'd agreed to, that I'd chosen. "You don't love me," Aiden said again, fading into the shadows. "You can't. You never could." I reached for him. "But—" It was too late. The dancers converged, and I was lost in a sea of dresses and whispered words. I pushed at them, but I couldn't break through, couldn't find Aiden or Seth. Someone pushed me, and I fell to my knees, the red silk ripping. I cried out for Aiden and then Seth, but neither heeded my pleas. I was lost, staring up at faces hidden behind masks, staring at strange eyes. I knew those eyes. They were the eyes of the gods. I jerked straight up in bed, a fine sheen of sweat covering my body as my heart continued to try to come out of my chest. Several moments passed before my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I recognized the bare walls of my dorm room. What the hell? I ran the back of my hand over my damp and warm forehead. I squeezed my watery eyes shut. Murmured a half-awake Seth. I sneezed in response once and then twice.
That's hot.
He blindly reached for the box of tissues.
I can't believe you're still sick. Here.
Sighing, I took the tissues from him and cradled the box to my chest as I pulled a few free. It's your fault. Achoo! It was your stupid idea to go swimming in 40-degree weather, jerkface.
I'm not sick.
I wiped my nose, waiting a few more seconds to make sure I was done sneezing my brains out, and then dropped the box on the floor. Cold sucked demon butt. In my 17 years of life, I'd never gotten a cold until now. I hadn't even known I could get one. Aren't you just so damn special?
You know it, was his muffled response.
Twisting at the waist, I glared at the back of Seth's head. He almost looked normal, with his face planted into a pillow. My pillow. Not like someone who'd become a god killer in less than 4 months. To our world, Seth was sort of like any mythical creature. Beautiful, but usually downright deadly. I had a weird dream. Seth rolled onto his side.
Come on, go back to sleep.
Since we'd returned from the Catskills a week ago, he'd been up my butt like never before. It wasn't like I didn't understand why, with the whole Fury business and me killing a Pure. He probably was never going to let me out of his sight again. You really need to start sleeping in your own bed. He turned his head slightly. A sleepy smile spread across his face.
I prefer your bed.
I prefer that we actually celebrate Christmas around here, and then I'd get some Christmas presents and get to sing Christmas songs, but I don't get what I want. Seth tugged me down, his arm a heavy weight that pinned me on my back.
Alex, I always get what I want.
A fine shiver coursed over my skin. Seth?
Yeah.
You were in my dream. One amber-colored eye opened.
Please tell me we were naked.
I rolled my eyes. You're such a perv. He sighed mournfully as he wiggled closer.
I'll take that as a no.
You'd be correct. Unable to fall back to sleep, I started chewing on my lip. So many worries surfaced at once that my brain spun. Seth? I watched him snuggle further down into the pillow before I continued. There was something charming about Seth when he was like this, a vulnerability and boyishness missing when he was fully awake. What happened when I was fighting the Furies? His eyes opened into thin slits. This was a question I'd asked several times since we'd returned to North Carolina. The kind of strength and power I displayed as I'd faced the gods was something only Seth, as a full-blown Apollyon, should have been able to accomplish. As an unawakened half-blood? Yeah, not so much. I should have gotten my rosy rear handed to me when I fought the Furies. Seth's mouth tightened.
Go back to sleep, Alex.
He refused to answer. Again. Anger and frustration rushed to the surface. I flung his arm off me. What aren't you telling me?
You're being paranoid.
His arm landed on my stomach again. I tried wiggling out of his grasp, but his grip tightened. Grinding my teeth, I rolled onto my side and settled next to him. I'm not being paranoid, you asshat. Something happened. I've told you that. Everything looked amber, like the color of your eyes. He blew out a long breath.
I've heard that people in high-stress situations have increased strength and senses.
That wasn't it.
And that people can hallucinate while under pressure.
I swung my arm back, narrowly missing his head. I didn't hallucinate.
I don't know what to tell you.
Seth lifted his arm and rolled onto his back.
Anyway, are you going to go back to class in the morning?
Instantly, a new worry surfaced. Classes meant facing everyone, Olivia, without my best friend. Pressure built in my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, but Caleb's pale face appeared, eyes wide and unseeing, a covenant dagger shoved deep in his chest. It seemed I could only remember what he'd really looked like in my dreams. Seth sat up, and I felt his eyes boring holes in my back.
Alex.
I hated our super special bond, absolutely loathed that whatever I was feeling fed into him. There was no such thing as privacy anymore. I sighed. I'm fine. He didn't respond. Yeah, I'm going to class in the morning. Marcus will have a fit when he gets back and realizes I haven't been to class. I flopped onto my back. Seth? He inclined his head toward me. Shadows cloaked his features, but his eyes cut through the darkness.
Yeah.
When do you think they're coming back? By they, I meant Marcus and Lucian and Aiden. My breath caught. It happened whenever I thought about Aiden and what he'd done for me, what he'd risked. Easing down on his side, Seth reached across me and grabbed my right hand. His fingers threaded through mine, palm to palm. My skin tingled in response. The mark of the Apollyon, the one that shouldn't be on my hand, warmed. I stared at our joined hands, not at all surprised when I saw the faint lines, also the marks of the Apollyon, making their way up Seth's arm. I turned my head, watching as the mark spread across Seth's face. His eyes seemed to brighten. They'd been doing that a lot more lately, both the runes and his eyes.
Lucian said they'd be back soon, possibly later today.
Very slowly, he moved the pad of his thumb down the line of the rune. My toes curled as my free hand dug into the blankets. Seth smiled.
No one's mentioned the Pure Blood Guard, and Don Samos has already returned. It appears Aiden's compulsion worked.
I wanted to pull my hand free. It was hard to concentrate when Seth messed with the rune on my palm. Of course he knew that, and being the tool that he was, he liked it.
No one knows what really happened.
His thumb now traced the horizontal line.
And it will remain that way.
My eyes drifted shut. The truth of how the Pure Blood Guard had died would have to remain a secret, or both Aiden and I would be in deep trouble. Not only had we almost hooked up over the summer, and then I'd had to go and tell him that I loved him, which was totally forbidden. I'd killed a Pure Blood out of self-defense. And Aiden had used compulsion on 2 Pures to cover it up. Killing a Pure meant death for a half-blood, no matter the situation, and a Pure was forbidden to use compulsion on another Pure. If any of it came out, we'd both be totally screwed. You think so? I whispered.
Yes.
Seth's breath was warm against my temple.
Go to sleep, Alex.
Letting the soothing sensation of his thumb against the rune lull me away, I drifted back to sleep, momentarily forgetting all the mistakes and decisions I'd made in the past 7 months. My last conscious thought was of my biggest mistake. Not the boy beside me, but the one I could never have. On a good, normal day, I hated trig class. The whole subject seemed pointless to me. Who cared about Pythagorean identities when I was attending the Covenant to learn how to kill things? But today, my hatred of the class had hit an all-time high. Almost everyone had their eyes on me, even Mrs. Kateris. I sank low in my seat, shoving my nose into the book I wouldn't read if Apollo came down and demanded that I do so. Only one set of eyes really affected me. The rest could suck it. Olivia's stare was heavy, condemning. Why, oh why couldn't we change seats? After everything that had happened, sitting next to her was the worst kind of torture. My cheeks burned. She hated me, blamed me for Caleb's death. But I hadn't killed Caleb. A half-blood demon had. I'd just been the one who'd gotten him to sneak out on a campus that had been under curfew for what had turned out to be a really good reason. So, in a way, it was my fault. I knew that, and gods, I'd do anything to change that night. Olivia's outburst at Caleb's funeral was probably why everyone else kept sneaking peeks at me. If I remembered correctly, I think she'd yelled something like, "You're the Apollyon," as I stared at her. Back at the New York Covenant in the Catskills, the half-blood kids had thought I was pretty damn cool, but here, not so much. When I met their gazes, they didn't look away fast enough to hide their unease. At the end of class, I shoved my book in my backpack and hurried out the door, wondering if Deacon would talk to me next period. Deacon and Aiden were poles apart on almost everything, but both Aiden and his younger brother seemed to view halves as their equals, a rare thing among the pure-blood race. Whispers followed me down the hall. Ignoring them was harder than I'd imagined. Every cell in my body demanded that I confront them. And do what? Jump on them like a crazy spider monkey and take them all out? Yeah, not going to win me any fans. Alex, wait up! My heart sank at the sound of Olivia's voice. I picked up my pace, practically barreling through a few younger half-bloods who stared at me with wide, frightened eyes. Why were they afraid of me? I wasn't the one who was going to go all god-killer soon. But oh no, they stared at Seth like he was a god. Just a few more doors and I could hide in technical truths and legends. Alex! I recognized Olivia's tone. It was the same one she used to get whenever she and Caleb were about to have one of their quarrels. Determined and stubborn as hell. Crap. She was right behind me now, and I was only a step away from my classroom. I wasn't going to make it. Alex, she said, we need to talk. I'm not doing this right now. Because really, being told that it was my fault Caleb was dead was not on the top of my list of things to hear today. Olivia grabbed my arm. Alex, I need to talk to you. I know you're upset, but you're not the only one who's allowed to miss Caleb. I was his girlfriend. I stopped thinking. Whirling around, I dropped my bag in the middle of the hall and caught her by the throat. In a second, I had her against the wall and on the tips of her toes. Eyes wide, she grabbed my arm and tried to push me off. I squeezed, just a little bit. Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw Leah, her arm no longer in a brace. The demon half that had broken her arm had also killed Caleb. Leah stepped forward like she wanted to intervene. Look, I get it, I whispered hoarsely. You loved Caleb. Guess what? So did I. And I miss him too. If I could go back in time and change that night, I would. But I can't, so please just leave me. An arm the size of my waist shot out from nowhere and tossed me back a good 5 feet. Olivia slumped against the wall, rubbing her throat. I whirled around and groaned. Leon, the king of impeccable timing, glared at me.
You are in need of a professional babysitter.
I opened my mouth, but then I closed it. Considering some of the things Leon had interrupted in the past, he had no idea how true his statement was. But then I realized something more important. If Leon was back, then my uncle and Aiden were also back.
You,
Leon gestured at Olivia.
Get to class.
He turned his attention back to me.
You are coming with me.
Biting my tongue, I grabbed my bag off the floor and commenced my walk of shame down the now crowded hallway. I caught a glimpse of Luke, but looked away before I could gauge his expression. Leon took the stairs. Gods know how I loved them, and we didn't speak until we stood in the lobby. The Fury statues were gone, but the empty space left a cold hole in my stomach. They'd be back. I was sure of it. It was just a matter of when. He towered over me when he stopped, nearly 7 feet of pure muscle.
Why is it every time I see you, you're about to do something you shouldn't?
I shrugged. It's a talent. Reluctant amusement flickered across his face as he pulled something out of his back pocket. It looked like a piece of parchment.
Aiden asked me to give this to you.
My stomach dropped as I reached out and took the letter, hands shaking. Is he okay? His brows furrowed.
Yes, Aiden is fine.
I didn't even try to hide my sigh of relief as I turned the letter over. It was sealed with an official-looking red stamp. When I looked up, Leon was gone. Shaking my head, I went over to one of the marble benches and sat. I had no idea how Leon could move such a massive body around so stealthily. The ground should tremble in his wake. Curious, I slid my finger under the crease and broke the seal. Unfolding the letter, I saw Lauden's elegant signature at the bottom. I quickly scanned the parchment once, and then I went back and read it again. And I read it a 3rd time. I felt unbearably hot and cold all at once. My mouth dried, throat seized. Fine tremors racked my fingers, causing the paper to flutter. I stood, and then sat back down. The 4 words replayed before my eyes. It was all I could see, all I cared to know. Your father is alive. Chapter 2. Heart racing, I took the steps 2 at a time. Spying Leon near my uncle's office, I broke into a sprint. He looked mildly alarmed when he saw me.
"What is it, Alexandria?"
I skidded to a halt. "Aiden gave this to you?" Leon frowned.
"Yes."
"Did you read it?"
"No, it wasn't addressed to me."
I clutched the letter to my chest. "Do you know where Aiden is?"
"Yes."
Leon's frown turned severe.
"He's been back since last night."
"Where is he right now, Leon? I need to know."
"I don't see how there could be any reason you'd need Aiden badly enough to interrupt his training."
He folded thick arms across his chest.
"And shouldn't you be heading to class?"
I stared a moment before I spun around and took off again. Leon wasn't stupid, so he hadn't accidentally told me where Aiden was, but I didn't care enough to look into the reason behind that. If Aiden was training, then I knew where to find him. A cold, damp breeze sprayed my cheeks as I burst through the lobby doors and headed toward the training arena. The milky gray sky was typical for late November, making summer seem so long ago. Classes for lower-level students were being held in the larger training rooms. Instructor Romvy's impatient barking from behind one of the closed doors followed my quick footsteps down the empty hall. Toward the end of the building, across from the med room where Aiden had brought me after Kane had handed my ass to me in training, was a smaller room equipped with the bare necessities and a sensory deprivation chamber. I had yet to train in that thing. Peeking through the crack in the door, I saw Aiden. He was in the middle of the mat, squaring off with a punching bag. A fine sheen of sweat coated his ropey muscles as he swung, knocking the bag back several feet. Any other time, I would have admired him rather obsessively, but my fingers spasmed, crunching the letter. I slid through the gap and crossed the room. "Aiden!" He whipped around, eyes flaring from a cool gray to a thunderous shade. He took a step back, wiping his arm across his forehead.
"Alex, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in class?"
I held the letter up. "Did you read what was in this letter?" He had the same look as Leon.
"No. Lawton asked me to make sure you got it."
Why had she trusted Aiden with such news? I couldn't even begin to figure that out, unless... Did you know what was in this letter?
"No. She just asked me to give it to you."
He bent, swiping a towel off the mat.
"What's in the letter that has you chasing me down?"
A stupid, totally unimportant question rose to the surface. "Why did you give it to Leon?" He averted his eyes, growing still.
"I thought it would be best."
My gaze dropped from his face to his neck. There was that thin silver chain again. I itched to know what he wore, since he wasn't a jewelry type of guy. I dragged my eyes back to his face. "My father is alive." Aiden tilted his head toward me.
"What?"
A bitter feeling settled in my stomach. "He's alive, Aiden, and he's been at the New York Covenant for years. He was there when I was there." The swirling emotions I felt when I first read the letter picked up again. "I saw him, Aiden, I know I did. The servant with the brown eyes, and he knew I was his daughter. That must be why he always looked at me strangely. It's probably why I was so drawn to him whenever I saw him. I just didn't know." Aiden looked pale under his natural tan.
"Can I?"
I handed him the letter and then dragged shaking hands through my hair. You know, there was something different about him. He never looked doped up like other servants. And when Seth and I were leaving, I saw him fighting the demons. I paused, drawing in a deep breath. "I just didn't know, Aiden." His brows furrowed as he scanned the letter.
"Gods," he murmured.
Turning away from him, I hugged my elbows. The sickening feeling I'd been staving off flowed through my stomach. Anger boiled the blood in my veins. "He's a servant! A freaking servant!"
"Do you know what this means, Alex?"
I faced him, shocked to find him so close. At once, I caught the scent of aftershave and salt water. "Yes, I have to do something. I have to get him out of there. I know I don't know him, but he's my father. I have to do something." Aiden's eyes widened.
"No."
"No what?" He folded up the letter in one hand and grabbed my arm with the other. I dug in my heels. "What are you—"
Not here, he ordered quietly.
Confused and a bit startled by the fact that Aiden was actually touching me, I let him lead me to the med office across the hall. He shut the door behind him, turning the lock. An uncomfortable heat flooded my system as I realized we were alone in a room with no windows, and Aiden had just locked the door. Seriously, I needed to get a grip, because this was so not the time for my ridiculous hormones. Okay, there really wasn't a time for them. Aiden faced me, his jaw flexed.
What are you thinking?
I took a step back. No way was I admitting that. Then I realized he was angry, furious with me. What did I do now? He placed the letter on the table I'd once sat upon.
You will not do something crazy.
My eyes narrowed as I snatched up the letter, finally catching on to why he was so angry. You expect me to do nothing and to just let my father rot in servitude?
You need to calm down.
Calm down! That servant in New York is my father, the father I'd been told was dead. Suddenly, I remembered Loudon in the library and how she talked about my father as if he was still alive. Rage socked me in the stomach. Why hadn't she told me? I could have spoken to him. How can I calm down?
I can't imagine what you're going through or what you're thinking.
He frowned.
Well, yes, I can imagine what you're thinking. You want to storm the Catskills and free him. I know that's what you're thinking.
Of course I was. He started toward me, his eyes turning a brilliant silver.
No.
I backed up, clutching Loudon's letter to my chest. I have to do something.
I know you feel like you need to, but Alex, you cannot return to the Catskills.
I wouldn't storm it. I edged around the table as he grew closer. I'll think of something. Maybe I'll get in trouble. Tally said all I needed to do was make one more mistake, and I was being sent to the Catskills. Aiden stared. The table was now between us. If I could get back there, then I can talk to him. I have to talk to him.
Absolutely not,
Aiden growled. My muscles locked. You can't stop me.
You want to bet?
He started around the table. Not really. The fierceness in his expression told me he'd do everything to stop me, which meant I needed to convince him. He's my father, Aiden. What would you do if it was Deacon? Low blow, I know.
Don't you even dare bring him into this, Alex. I won't allow you to get yourself killed. I don't care who it's for. I won't.
Tears burned the back of my throat. I can't leave him in that kind of life. I can't. Pain flickered in his steely gaze.
I know, but he's not worth your life.
My arms fell to my sides, and I stopped trying to outmaneuver him. How can you make that decision? And then the tears I'd been fighting broke free. How can I not do something? Aiden didn't say anything as he placed his hands on my upper arms and guided me to him. Instead of pulling me straight into his embrace, he backed up against the wall and slid down, bringing me along with him. I was nestled in his arms, my legs curled against him, one of my hands fisting his shirt. The breath I took was shallow, filled with a kind of hurt I couldn't let go. I'm tired of people lying to me. Everyone lied about my mom, and now this? I thought he was dead. And gods, I wish he were, because death is better than what he has to live through. My voice broke, and more tears spilled over my cheeks. Aiden's arms tightened around me, and his hand smoothed the comforting circle over my back. I wanted to stop crying because it was weak and humiliating, but I couldn't stop. Discovering my father's true fate was horrifying. When the worst of the tears subsided, I pulled back a little and lifted my teary gaze. Damp, silky waves of dark hair clung to his forehead and temples. The dim light of the room still highlighted those high cheekbones and lips I'd memorized so long ago. Aiden rarely ever fully smiled, but when he did, it was breathtaking. There'd been a few times I'd gotten to bask in that rare smile. The last time had been at the zoo. Seeing him now, truly seeing him, the first time after he'd risked everything to protect me, I wanted to start crying again. Over the last week, I'd replayed what had happened over and over again. Could I have done something differently? Disarmed the guard instead of shoving my blade deep into his chest? And why had Aiden used compulsion to cover up what I'd done? Why would he risk so much? And none of that seemed important right now, not after learning about my father. I wiped under my eyes with my...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?